This is IA Forward, your playbook for success as an independent insurance agent. Here to help you knock it out of the ballpark are your hosts, Shane Tatum and Tonya Lead.
Welcome to IA Forward. I want to go back to our sports roots from when we started this podcast 3 years ago. Talk about the Nike slogan, "Just Do It," and the recent changes they've made and what that has to do with insurance.
I love sports, and I'm never going to argue with you if you would like to talk about sports. I don't care what kind of sports we're talking about. I'm a ball sport guy, so I love it when there's a ball involved, but there's lots of sports, and there's lots of different things that have correctly been classified as sports now. I will use your dancing background to say, if you've never danced, which I have never danced, but if you've never really put yourself in that spot, then you really don't understand how difficult it is, and it is a sport. Cheer is a sport. It doesn't have to be a ball sport, even though I am a ball sport guy. I think just to kind of level set there, that while I think we're going to talk about some things with marketing and branding and slogans and all that, this does relate to the insurance industry because sales, insurance agency ownership is very aligned with the competitive background of sport. And that's why we did that. That's why we loved to talk about sports, is because it's such a relational thing to our industry, specifically independent agency ownership, independent agency sales. I mean, it's so relatable to competitive background.
I've never thought about it until the moment you were just speaking. So if you're into ball sports and I am a ballroom dancer, does that make ballroom dancing a ball sport?
I understand your play on words, but unless you're going to dance and juggle a ball.
My current professional dance partner's wife does an incredible showcase piece utilizing a ball that's really amazing that I should send to you.
I would love to see it. I am expanding my mindset around sports. Obviously, you're not required to have a ball involved to have competition. It's just the nature of my background, how I grew up. I grew up playing team-oriented ball sports, the major three for male athletes in the 80s and 90s: football, basketball, baseball. So I naturally gravitate there because that's what I do, and that's how my brain is wired. But yeah, I think it's interesting how diverse and expanded the world of sports has become in general. I know we have the Olympics in Texas, the high school sports regulatory body. I mean, cheer fought for recognition as a UIL sport for decades and has now become a UIL sport in the state of Texas. So that's a big win for those that are competing, regardless of what your perspective is. And I love it because it expands something for the insurance industry, that we need competitive people that have experience with competition to come into our industry. Like we need that. We need those competitive juices to come into the independent agency system, not just the exclusive agency system. That sets it up pretty well for the Nike change.
I just got finished reading The Boys in the Boat, which was the award-winning film directed by George Clooney. Read the book recently, and looking at the struggles and the teamwork and the psychological challenges, the physical challenge they overcame. Just a really fantastic read.
I've heard really good things about it, both movie and book. Not a ball sport.
But it's big sticks in boats.
I get it.
And it's their version of football. Like, seriously, like when you would have 100,000 people come to a college match, that's college football for us.
There was a Rob Lowe film, Oxford Blues or Oxford something. Anyway, it was big rowing theme. I think it's that we have this incredible view across different continents, across global spectrum of different sports that draw such an important group of people in terms of just the masses. And yeah, I don't know. I just can babble on for days about my love of sport.
Getting back to the Nike slogan change, my husband and I were watching a football game last weekend. A Nike ad comes on, and I'm loving the ad. And then at the very end of it, the screen flashes black, and in these big red block letters that are not the normal Nike font, it says, "Why do it?" And it only flashed for probably maybe a quarter of a second. Very subliminal. I looked at the cute boy, who is the most unobservant human being on the planet, which I think is one of the reasons that we are married. I asked him, "Did you see that?" He's like, "Did I see what?" I said, "The Nike that just popped up and it said, 'Why do it?' as opposed to 'just do it.'" And he's like, "No, I didn't see that." So the rest of the night, I'm paying attention for another Nike commercial to come on, and it never did. The next day, I am reading some marketing journals, and I'm seeing everywhere not about Nike's new slogan that has changed to "Why do it?" Now, 35 years ago, Nike introduced its iconic "Just Do It" slogan, right? And the idea of "why do it," they feel speaks to a younger generation who are hesitant to get out and do things because of a fear of perfectionism. "Just Do It" was very much targeted to you and I as Gen Xers, even into our millennials, but they're feeling as though Gen Z and Gen Alpha are not going to respond to "Just Do It" 35 years later.
Cracker Barrel.
I'm very familiar with Cracker Barrel.
Are we having another Cracker Barrel here? I've been thinking about this. You sent me this article a few days ago. The explanation is where I think maybe in this world of information, it's communication. I'm a big, let's communicate, let's get information out there, let's talk about things, the perspective, all this stuff. I'm good with that. In your organization, like explaining to your team what your vision is, why you want to do something. Simon Sinek, start with why. The question that I have is, in this article that we're going to reference, there's this deep explanation of trying to attract to this, these next generations, the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha. And it's almost like they're just trying to explain why they're changing to why instead of the subtle change. I just feel like this is going to be, or maybe it has been, overthought. Cracker Barrel, you're messing with a nostalgia. You're messing with a group across country. East Texas, very familiar with this. Main Street. Within the Nike spectrum, I think the better approach here, if you're going to make a change like this, because it's subtle, you saw it on a flash, and then you didn't see it again. So if you're going to do it subtly, changing from "just do it" to "why do it," is it better to really explain it? Or is it better to just let it flow, to just mix it in? And that's the thing that I've been processing for a few days now. Are we sometimes over communicating? Are we sometimes explaining things that don't need to be explained? Like the Cracker Barrel comparison, which is probably not fair, and I'm going to do that because I'm going to have fun with it. The CEO tried to explain her way and justify it, and just was totally missing the mark with the customer base. You're going to run off more people than you're going to attract new. Are they going to run off more people than they're going to attract new? That's always a consideration that has to take place when it comes to marketing. I don't know that marketers as a whole think about that sometimes. I think a lot of times, a lot of marketers, certainly marketers with less experience, they're just thinking about being the next great thing, the next great campaign, almost like a self-serving concept in a way. They're after the marketing awards, the marketing recognition, instead of what drives sales, which I think is a key question that a mentor of mine has brought to my attention. Like, what drives sales? What drives leads? What drives opportunities? Are we doing that when we're talking about our next marketing thing? Or are we just trying to have a fancy thing? a cool slogan. That relates to our independent agencies really well. Are we doing something that's going to run off our existing customers in exchange for trying to find new customers? That's a real struggle within the marketing spectrum.
As a recovering perfectionist, I was very intrigued by this idea because just do it for me was pretty perfect. In having this discussion with the boy who really just wanted to watch the game at this point, but when you have that kind of big marketing change in the middle of a football game, my brain is split because I'm trying to watch the game, but it wasn't a game that was extremely relevant to me. Like I'm watching it because it's good football, but it's not directly affecting my world at the time. And it kind of made me go to this place of why do we make things harder on ourselves by trying something new or unfamiliar? Why do we do it? Why would Nike take such a risky step? And why would they take a chance on financial stability on that kind of 30, 35-year-old change? And then it got me thinking about this idea of winning. You and I, as Gen Xers, we were taught it's all about the win. It is all about winning. But now I am more of an idea that winning is relative to what you're trying to do in life. So I like the idea of why do it from a mental perspective. Is winning and greatness and potential what that means to you, or is it what it means to everyone? There's so many things about this that provoked thought in my brain. And yes, I was probably one of 15 people in the country during this game that went down this road. So I get it. But like you, I don't like the explanation because I found the explanation offensive to Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
It assumes this anxious generation concept, and these labels are not always true. Some journalist has a bad experience with a millennial or a Gen Z, writes an article and it catches fire and labels an entire generation incorrectly. And I think that I've spoken openly over the last year how I see Gen Z different than anxious. I don't see Gen Z as anxious. My experience with lots of Gen Z individuals is that, yes, there might be some striving for perfection as athletes, and I'm talking Gen Z athletes here, but there's also this balanced understanding in most cases where they're playing a game of failure. Maybe their sport is a sport of failure. Softball, baseball would be the first to come to my mind, where you can succeed 3 out of 10 times and be successful. When you're failing more than you're succeeding, that is a game of failure and a perfection mindset, unlike a ballroom dance routine. A cheer routine is perfection. Perfection is going to be the goal because it can't be a game of failure. And Tonya knows more than anyone that one little mistake in a 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute,
90 seconds to 2
90
minutes.
second routine. Okay, I was even longer than I needed to be. So a 90-minute dance routine, one slight bobble, mistake, that's a definite world of perfection. So like if we pick on Tonya, and I do times about, hey, I need you to not be a perfectionist. I need you to not worry about it. Done is better than perfect. All those sayings that I've said over the years. I'm talking from a perspective of baseball. Even if we went to football, a quarterback with a completion percentage of 60, 65% is pretty dang good. There are competitions in this world that are considered sports, and a dance routine, a cheer competition routine. You can't be in a game of failure when you're in those types of events. If that's your craft, then you are after this world of perfection. That is not the business world. You do have to go through a bit of recovery. If you're coming out of that competition perfection world into a business entrepreneurial ownership world to understand that failure's part of that game. And that's the part where I do not see what Nike sees. And the question is, I feel like the marketing world, just my perspective here, can be divided into two camps. There is the camp of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay. And then there is the second camp that I've heard throughout my life. If it ain't broke, break it. So I think there's two different views when it comes to what's going on in a business, what's going on in our independent agencies, to zero that back in to what we always talk about and come back to center with. Is Nike breaking something that's not broke? So they would fall in the, if it ain't broke, break it. Or is it a situation where they're creating a new problem with the idea that's going to generate sales? That's going to generate an opportunity. These things don't come out without high-level executive approval. There's definitely not a change of slogan from just do it to why do it without CEO approval at some point, maybe even board review. And so, I doubt that the chief marketing officer, the highest level marketer within Nike, which is no slouch position, by the way, I doubt they're making this call in a vacuum, which means that the highest level of Nike is seeing this as a good direction. That's what's most interesting to me, because I'm not a Nike follower, but do they have a problem? I don't know. I don't know that they have a problem, or I don't know that they have a problem that they're trying to break so they can grow. Like, what drives someone to do that?
Yes, Nike is for sure having revenue decline issues. Third quarter revenue decline is expected to be 11.5%, which is about $11 billion. They are having some financial challenges, but I am not sure an esoteric thought of slogan change is really the answer. And of course, they brought in some really big names for the launch of the new slogan. Tyler, the Creator, Caitlin Clark, Carlos Alcatraz. I get all of the things they're trying to do. You were talking about that there's two things. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Or if it ain't broke, break it. To me, this seems almost like a third option, that they were trying to have this overarching spiritual, esoteric feel to it, where it's more trying to have you think, not that you have to go after greatness, but to think about what greatness means to you. I don't necessarily know if me thinking about what greatness means to me makes me buy tennis shoes, athletic apparel, or golf clubs. I am in my upper 40s, so I am not their target demographic.
And this as this idea around, if you have revenue decline, you probably have some underlying business problem, right? Marketing isn't going to be the savior. A business leader's misdirected thought is that, let's bring in marketing to save us. They can save us, but we're not going to really address our underlying problem, which is our shoe designs are off track. Our apparel designs are off track. They don't feel good. The competition from the OnClouds of the world is fierce. I'm in my third pair of OnClouds. Have not purchased a pair of Nikes in a while. Now, some would say that's because you're an old man, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. But the reality is that they have a shoe problem. There's not enough celebrity endorsements in the world to save that. The Jordan brand, and I know that someone smarter than me can explain it, but obviously Jordan is a subset of Nike, right? Has his own brand within the Nike realm. The Jordan brand is excelling, I believe, and I may be fact checked on that, and that's okay. I'll admit I may be off a little bit, but I think that we've gone through this place where we goat 10-year-olds because they get a hit in a little league game. we've reached this point where we're overusing the term GOAT. To be goated means that the internet or social media has christened whatever happened, whatever play, whatever game, whatever scenario as a goated event. We've lost that entire spectrum because it was basically this debate of LeBron James and Michael Jordan, or Nolan Ryan versus whoever you want to compare him to in pitching, Derek Jeter versus Cal Ripken Jr. And there's all these kind of who's the GOAT. And now the incredible nature of social media, we use that term way too loosely. And we have this constant drive to become an influencer. Like, that's what teenagers today, it's a very high percentage of what do you want to do with your life? What career do you want to have? There's a lot of, I want to become an influencer, right? And so there's a lot of this aspiration that makes you go, I understand why Nike is moving to why versus just do it. Why do it versus just do it. I can understand the why behind the why, to make a little dad joke there. What is the why behind changing to the why? And you kind of see this. And I think it's all wrapped up in this reality that we have to do more, but then we go so far as to complicate it. And I think that's the rule they've broken here, is if you have to explain it or feel the necessity to give this huge explanation, or in Cracker Barrel's case, send your CEO on a rebranding tour to talk about why it's going to be so great, you've entered the realm of complication instead of keeping it simple. And simplicity is always going to win when it comes to marketing. And I know that works for our independent agency over some complicated thing. Jordan's showing up in the NASCAR world, not necessarily making everybody happy there, but he's doing his thing. If I'm a Nike executive, I'm paying attention to Jordan Brand. I'm looking at what's going on. What's the problem with our top line revenue growth? We're changing slogans. We're trying to find momentum. And yet we have this incredible example with the Jordan Brand. We should understand what's happening there and see if we can apply some of those principles over here in our mainline business. That would be my first order of business if I was named the Nike CEO. Something's not working. What's not working? What is working? What is working is obviously the Jordan Brand. Is there anything else within our Nike domain that is working? What is not working? I think that relates to our independent agencies extremely well. We should be in a constant what is working, what is not working. We should be in that constant review. I just want to caution you to sometimes take it a little slower. There's all this peer pressure to grow as fast as your peers are talking about their growing, to always make a change, follow the shiny object that's going to take your agency to a whole new level. One of our partners at the Integra Partner Network is a virtual assistant company, IE Blueprint. I saw a post by their founder, Bo Pilgrim, the other day that made a lot of sense. Like, how do you scale? You scale your business one virtual assistant at a time. That was their kind of statement on that. Very simple post, but that's true. If you're going to scale using virtual assistants, I'm not advocating one way or another there. I'm just saying, if that's going to be your plan, if you're going to scale through virtual assistants, you don't scale 5 virtual assistants at a time because you don't have the processes and you don't have the time for that. You scale 1 virtual assistant at a time. Congrats to Bo and his team for coming up with that. If you're going to introduce AI into your agency, you don't introduce 10 AI concepts. You don't introduce 10 AI agents into your process. You introduce 1. You stay simple. You go one at a time. I think that is the issue that we have to constantly think about here. And a lot of times in our agencies, we unfortunately kind of do the Nike thing where I'm not really sure that we've thought about what we're going to disrupt and how disruptive is it going to be when we make a change. I'll testimonial here from inside the Integra world. We have recently made a change in our retail operation within personal lines to go back to something that we changed 4 or 5 months ago. We figured out that it wasn't working, that it was sort of a accidental threw the baby out with the bathwater concept. And, we kind of tucked our tail and come back and said, okay, here we go. We got to make this adjustment, right? Managing director on the podcast to talk about this change. Last week, we ripped it apart. We went back to what had worked before and figured out we actually had it right before, but we had one specific area of the process that was not good, that was broken. And rather than just address that small area, we addressed the entire personal line spectrum. We threw the baby out with the bathwater. That's my concern here with Nike. If they're going to introduce Why Do It and not retire Just Do It, I can get on board with that. If they're going to replace Just Do It with Why Do It, that's where I get a concern. Is this really the right strategy? Are they throwing the baby out with the bathwater? Are they running away from a core market that's brought them to their current place and trying to chase a new market in panic mode? That's the question. If I was consulting, they hired me and Tonya to come in, we're available to fix this for them. I would say, okay, Tonya, we need to see if they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater here.
From a different perspective, I love the idea of starting an independent agency because building something of your own is worth it. Independence isn't easy. It is difficult to leave the comfort of a captive carrier. It is difficult to leave a really great job where you are a top producer and making an excellent living for your family. It is hard to become independent in the middle of a hard market. So why would you risk everything to start something from scratch? Because it's yours.
Why Do It would fit us a whole lot better than it would fit Nike, in my opinion. We are in the business of helping agents, partnering with agents, and starting new independent agencies. That is what the Integra Partner Network does. That is why we named the podcast IA Forward. We want you to think about the independent agency system going forward. It's all connected. And I agree 100% that there is an easy why when it comes to why start an independent agency. Break where you're at, assuming you're in a producing non-equity role, non-ownership role, you're in a exclusive agency role, and you're generating something for someone else. You're in this world where you're not necessarily building your own asset. I've seen some things on social media about not everyone being cut out to be an agency owner. I think my view, maybe it's biased view, that's fine, I don't care. I think the world of agency networks today, us being one, allows for the producing mindset to become an agency owner a whole lot easier and with a better perspective of how to do it and have help than was available 15, 20 years ago. I feel like there's this deal of, should a producer ever leave and start their own agency, or should they just stay where they are? And that's where that question has been surfacing around social media circles that I follow. I 100% believe that anybody that is a really good producer, if you've got lead generation, you've got sales capability, you're producing, then you absolutely have the ability to become an agency owner. That's how I feel about it. Personal lines, commercial lines, etc. I think that is the reality. The very large independent agencies, obviously, they are not going to love that statement. They want to bring their producers along. The smart ones are kind of running themselves like law firms where they allow for partnership status, maybe buy-ins to partnership status. If you're getting that as a producer or you're in an organization that allows that, then okay, that's a pretty good spot. But if you're in an agency or a situation where that is not on the table for you with existing agency ownership, whether it's exclusive agency, whether it's independent agency, well, then what are you doing? What? If you're a good producer, if you're a good salesperson, if you're average, maybe the best place is to stay where you're at. But if you're a good salesperson and you're doing well, why aren't you building that asset for yourself? That is the nature of the independent agency system. You can build that asset for yourself, build a family legacy or sell, right? I mean, if you want to sell it down the road, that's fine too. And so, yeah, I think Tonya is 100% right on this. It is 100% connected to the why. Why wouldn't you build an independent agency for yourself?
I'm going to leave us today with this quote from Tony Gaskins. If you don't build your dream, someone will hire you to build theirs.
Attitude's a choice. Make a great one.
Bye, y'all.
At the Integra Partner Network, we understand that carrier access is the key to your agency's success. That's why Integra offers direct access to top-rated personal and commercial carriers, ensuring your agency thrives in today's challenging market. And with our comprehensive resources, profit sharing and bonus opportunities, technology and peer support, all while you retain 100% of your book with no penalties to exit. Integra is ready to empower you and your agency to find sustained growth. Find your way to Integra. Visit IntegraPartnerNetwork.com today. That's IntegraPartnerNetwork.com.